Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jennifer Pattison Tuohy is here. We kick off the show talking about the iPad, the new iPad, and how it has a chip that's going to help you with your smart home. Afterward, we talk about California's new law aimed at providing a warning label for teens accessing social media. Afterwards, Moren of Six Colors stops by to give us the rundown of all the new stuff Apple announced. And I round things out talking about Instagram's new PG-13 guidelines for teen accounts on the platform. All of that coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 409, with Jennifer Pattison Tuohy and me, Mikah Sargent. Recorded Thursday, October 16th, 2025. Apple's new M5 MacBook and iPad Pro. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking that tech news. It is October, the spookiest month, and I am joined by a wonderful guest, a ghostly presence here. No, it's Jennifer Pattison Tuohy. Hello, Jen.
I am wearing white.
Yeah, that's what I was going for at the end.
I can be the ghost. I do wish I'd had time to go find my witch's hat, though. Next time it'll be November.
Next year.
I'll prepare next time.
So this, of course, is the part of the show where we talk about our stories of the week. Later in the episode, I will be talking to someone about the overall announcements from Apple that just hit this week. But as is the way of things, I'm very excited to be joined by Jen, who is our expert on all things home automation, and everything therein. Tell us about your story of the week.
Yeah. So I, like everyone else, eagerly awaited, not tuned in because press releases, Apple's announcements this week. And there was some hope that we may see a new Apple TV, maybe HomePod Mini 2. Didn't get any of that. But for any smart home enthusiast, there was a glimmer of hope, very hidden, but I wrote a piece about it this week. The new iPad, so the iPad Pro M5, is the first iPad to officially support Thread. Now, Thread is the smart home protocol that Matter runs over. It's a protocol that Apple has used for a while, starting with the HomePod Mini back in 2022 when that launched. Wow. So I think that was the date. My head is too many numbers in my head right now. But when the HomePod Mini launched, that's when Apple first used Thread in its smart home. And now what's so interesting about this is that the new iPad Pro has Apple's new N1 wireless networking chip. And that, if in case you missed it, which you probably did because it wasn't widely covered, when the iPhone 17 launched in September, that was launched along with this new wireless networking chip. And this is Apple Design's chip, and it has Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and Thread, all combined on one chip. And this is what I would call a smart home powerhouse chip. It has everything you need for a Matter smart home connectivity. Really is like, okay, this chip will make a perfect smart home hub. And everyone's like, well, the iPad is not a smart home hub. It is not. So there are two things I wrote about in this article. One is that the new iPad Pro with the N1 wireless chip could potentially sort of foreshadow what we're going to see in the new Apple TV and the new HomePod Mini 2, which may launch sometime this year, although the sort of prevailing theory is that they may be waiting on the Mini for the new Siri. So next spring is more likely. But we may well see an Apple TV sooner than that, especially as they just rebranded Apple TV Plus to Apple TV. Woo, big change. But that now we've got two products called Apple TV. Well, actually three, because there's also the app, and then the service, and then the device. So to me, I'm like, just call the Apple TV an Apple Home Hub. That would make so much sense. So I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe we're going to get that. So who knows? This is just all my speculation. But when we do get a new Apple TV, I would be very surprised if it didn't have this new wireless networking chip. And this chip is kind of exciting because, like I said, it sort of has everything you need for a smart home hub. And Apple Home has right now HomePods, HomePod Minis, and some Apple TVs are home hubs. And this means you can run your smart home automations, control it away from home, using the Apple Home app. Without a home hub, you can still use Apple Home, but you have more limited control when you can't control it when you're away from home. Automations won't run if you're not at home. So you need one of these in your home. And the iPad used to be a home hub until Apple switched over to a new HomeKit architecture a couple years ago, and then it deprecated the iPad as a home hub. This could indicate that they might bring back that capability, which I know a lot of people missed because not everyone wants to have a HomePod Mini or an Apple TV, but they still might want to run Apple Home automation. So having an iPad in your home that can do that for you would be a nice thing. So potentially having the N1 chip in here could mean Apple is going to bring back that functionality. Has not been confirmed. I did reach out to Apple, have not heard back, but the fact that Thread is in there means it would be an easy lift. One of the reasons it hasn't been a home hub in the past, or why they deprecated, I think, is because iPads don't always stay in the home.
Right.
So when you take your home hub away from your home, things can go wrong. So, it's a sort of toss up there. But it's interesting, I think, that they're bringing Thread to it. We do know that, and based on reporting that I did it last year, that there are Thread radios in nearly all the other iPads and all the Macs, but none of them have actually been activated. Apple's never publicly acknowledged that they're there. We just found evidence of it in FCC filings. So this is the first iPad that publicly lists support for Thread. So I'm excited to see what Apple's going to do with this. So Apple does have Thread in iPhones, all the iPhone 17, most of the 16, and then the Pro lines of the 15s all have Thread radios. And just to sort of I've gone off on why I'm excited about this chip, but actually what it can do, most likely, and this is what the iPhone can do with Thread radio, is it can control Thread devices locally. So when you go buy a new Thread smart lock, you will be able to set it up using your iPad and not have to have a Thread border router. And this has been a real kind of pain point as people have been adopting the smart home and the new Matter smart home standard and Thread devices. Is like, what's a Thread border router? Why do I have to have one? What if I don't have one? Now, if you have an iPad Pro with the newest one, you wouldn't necessarily need a Thread border router to set up your smart home device. So that's kind of overall what I got excited about from the announcement. I know most people were probably more excited about the new MacBook, but I was like, yay, Thread.
Yeah, so this is something that I was asked about when the new phones came out and I was doing my review, was kind of, why is this chip in there and what does it provide for someone who is thinking about getting into or adding Thread devices? And that was the main thing, which you just talked about there, which is can you talk about the difference between a Thread device that is a child device versus a Thread border router?
Yeah.
The iPhone, it's my understanding, is the full experience, right? As a HomePod Mini or another device would be. Whereas something like this little friend I have here, which is a little Eve sensor, it does not have the capability to kind of be a node, right, in the Thread. Thread network. And then maybe could you also tell the listeners a little bit about the difference in Thread versus what we're used to with wireless networking, where the more you have in Thread's case, the stronger and more robust, versus the other where that interference is an issue. Yeah.
So to your first question, like, as I mention one of the core use cases here of having Thread in a mobile device like an iPad or a phone is that you can use it to set up a device, so that you take away that friction of like, I just bought this new lock and I can't use it, because that's not a great experience. But what it can also do, and this is something that I had an Apple executive talk to me about, who's the head of the Thread group. And so I know this one for a fact, because, Apple is very wishy-washy about answering questions, is that because it is battery powered and because many devices on Thread are battery powered, this is one of the benefits of Thread. It's a low power smart home protocol, so it doesn't drain power from a device like, say, Wi-Fi will. If you've ever had a Wi-Fi smart lock, you'll know you've been changing the batteries every 3 months. If you have a Thread smart lock, it will last up to about a year. We're still testing to see exactly how long I've been getting on these new Thread locks, but that's one of the benefits. If your internet goes down and your power is out, you have a Thread radio in your iPhone or your iPad, you can still control battery-powered devices because it can establish a direct connection over Thread. A lot like Bluetooth. It shares a lot with Bluetooth in terms of connectivity. Connectivity
Are they
features.
cousins or are they sisters?
The key difference.
I've opened up a can of worms.
And the key difference, and this goes to your other question, why Thread in the smart home, is that Thread is a self-healing mesh network. Now, Bluetooth, you can see Bluetooth mesh networking. It's not that common. Most Bluetooth devices are point-to-point, like earbuds or a keyboard, or, they're even, some smart lights run on Bluetooth mesh, but in general, it's more point-to-point. Thread is a self-healing mesh network. And to your question about why this is what makes it so good for the smart home, is the more devices you have, the stronger that mesh network is. So the signal can hop, like Zigbee or a Z-Wave mesh network, can hop from device to device. And your little Eve, that's an Eve outdoor sensor, right? Or indoor sensor,
it's
air
for
quality.
Outdoors,
Yeah, there's the outdoor one and the indoor one. That is an end device. So it's not powered, not plugged in, permanently powered. It's battery powered. So it can receive signals, but it can't pass on signals. But any Thread node that is powered, so like a light bulb or a smart plug, can pass on the signal, so that the more devices you have, the stronger your network. A Thread border router is a always plugged in device, so it's going to be something like a HomePod Mini or a Apple TV, and it takes the signal from devices and translates it to other networks. So it helps Thread connect to the internet, because Thread is an entirely local mesh network, just like Bluetooth is entirely local. It doesn't have an integral connection to the internet. It needs a Thread border router to send that signal. And that's why Apple introduced the HomePod Mini to be a Thread border router, in order to connect Thread smart home devices to the internet so you can control them away from home. But you can use Thread entirely locally in your home and not have any internet connection, and just control it directly from your phone or now your iPad.
Ooh. There's a lot to
sorry.
No, and that's okay, because that's
so
how complicated it is. Absolutely. But the good news is, when it comes to this kind of a thing, it's been my experience that on my end, the stuff really is just working. There was a period of time where things were a little bit confusing for the devices on my network, because I had Eero running its own Thread network, and that it was not trying to play ball with the stuff that was sort of doing Thread over HomeKit, and it got a little messy. But then I was able to kind of say, you know what, I'm just starting fresh. We're just going to do this from the top, and then everything's from there seems to have kind of locked in, and has been a pretty great experiance. So
that has been one of the big problems with Thread, is that border router issue. And actually, with iOS 26, Apple introduced the Thread 1.4, which allows border routers from different manufacturers to merge. So you can actually have an Apple Home Thread network in your home with a HomePod Mini, a Google Nest Hub, and because SmartThings just added support for this as well, a SmartThings AO Tech smart home hub, all working together in harmony to keep your smart home strong. We're still waiting on Amazon, which is the Eero and the Echo devices. That they do not support this merging of thread networks yet, but that's coming. So yeah, it's exciting. It's all coming together.
Finally.
Yes.
All right, we have to take a quick break before we come back with my story of the week, joined this week by Jennifer Pattison. Tuohy, let me tell you about our sponsor, Zapier, bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. I love Zapier. Zapier is super, super cool. We were just talking about home automation, and this is your automation platform for everything else. You know, a lot of people talking about AI. We talk about AI a lot on the show. And if there's one thing you've learned about AI, it's that talking about that new technology isn't the same as actually making use of it and understanding it. And so if you are trying to figure it out, well, Zapier can make things a lot easier because it's where tech innovators break the hype cycle and put AI to work. If you haven't heard of Zapier, well, let me tell you, it's how you bring the power of AI to your work and not just talk about it. With Zapier's AI orchestration platform, you can bring the power of AI to any workflow, connect top AI models like ChatGPT and Claude to the tools your team already uses, so you can add AI exactly where you need it. It could be AI-powered workflows, an autonomous agent, a customer chatbot, or something else. You can orchestrate it with Zapier. Zapier, it's for everyone, tech expert or not. No IT bottlenecks, no complexity, no AI hype, just results. It was super cool to, I've used Zapier in the past for creating some different automations between my Google Sheets documents and my email. And then I said, I'd like to get even more control, but I don't know exactly how. Well, now there's this really cool feature where you can talk to a little AI chatbot to help figure out what you need to do and how you need to set things up to add even more power to your zaps. And I think that's a really cool new thing you can do. Teams have already automated over 300 million AI tasks using Zapier. Ready to join them? Get started for free by visiting zapier.com/TNW. That's zapier.com/TNW. And of course, we thank Zapier for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. As I mentioned, joined this week by Jennifer Pattison Tuohy. I want to talk about California, which is a
big state.
Yeah, big old state that is often, responsible for shaping laws across the country. California just became the second state in the nation to require social media platforms to display health warning labels to users under 18 years of age. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the legislation into law this week, making a significant escalation in the ongoing battle between state regulators and tech giants over youth safety online. Now, these warnings will alert young users that social media can have a profound risk of harm to the mental health and well-being of children and adolescents, language borrowed directly from a 2023 report by former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. It's a bold move, almost certain to end up in court, but it signals just how seriously states are taking the mounting research that seem to link social media use to anxiety, body dysmorphia, and sleep disruption in young people. I'd argue that sleep disruption is not just for young people. I certainly have found myself doing an Instagram scroll late at night and going, I need to go to bed. In any case, California's AB 56, authored by Democratic Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, targets major platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and a quick kind of understanding of how the warning system works. So when a user under 18 first logs in each day, so when they visit the app each day, they'll see a skippable 10-second warning. If they spend more than 3 hours on the platform, an unskippable 30-second warning appears, and that 30-second warning will repeat after each additional hour of use. So my first thing that I kind of want to talk about here is when I think of these sort of Surgeon General's warnings, right? They are these blocks of text that use direct language, but often, relatively adult language, and by that I mean it's sophisticated language, to tell you, the cigarettes that you're buying are going to kill you. The alcohol that you're buying could have this impact or that impact. What is interesting here is seeing this warning being created for and provided to kids. This seems unique to me, where it's not a warning that is for an adult, but instead is being displayed when a child is using the app. And it makes me think about, do we think it's going to go over their heads? Like, what do we think about this doing in terms of having an impact? Is it more actually for the adult who helps the child get started in the day, or are we looking at people sort of in the older age, 13 to 17, as opposed to kind of the younger kids?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, I think I've used this phrase before, you have to be 13 to be internet legal, right? Right. So to actually have any of these accounts, use Facebook or Instagram, and I know this is going back to a year or so because my daughter just turned 14. So I remember when she turned 13, there was a sort of big change in how she could use certain apps. But now there's, I think this is more targeted at teenagers rather than younger kids. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't see the appeal of things like Instagram for, babies.
That's fair. That's
small kids
for babies. Instagram
I mean,
for
maybe
babies.
maybe some bluey warnings.
Yeah. Well, like YouTube, right?
Well, YouTube, and then there's YouTube Kids, which is not good. So in terms of you'd think, oh, great, this is safe for kids. But I think this is definitely targeted at teenagers. I think also, to be fair, a lot of those warnings on cigarette packets and alcohol are also targeted at kids, even though they're not allowed to technically use those products. We obviously know that a lot of teenagers do. An interesting note for anyone that hasn't been to England in a while, cigarette packets in England are covered in, they don't just have a little warning, they have these really graphic images of body parts that have been destroyed by cancer. It's very powerful. And I think, one of the things that might be quite powerful about this is it's going to be more visual. Rather than just a text warning, like you mentioned before. Having something that is like a visual warning that isn't just read this, it's going to be better for your health type of thing, is more impactful for sure, and especially for younger kids. I think my issue with all of this, and this may be controversial, is it feels like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction that's not really solving the problem. And when you get to the issue of the problem, it's in the word social. It's social media. The problem is society. It's not apps. It's not technology. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and we had a wave of anorexia problems with girls of my age growing up because of the promotion of those stick thing kind of 90s heroin chic models that were all over magazines and movies and TV shows. Children absorb society through the means that we put it out. Right. And, yes, social media is more invasive and is more pervasive perhaps than magazines or TV, but it's still all coming from the same core, which is society. And ultimately, that is a different fix than 30-second warnings in apps. And I've talked about this a lot when I've been on TWiT, because, I have two kids who have been through the thick of social media. My son is 17, my daughter is 14. I didn't let my daughter have social media apps until she was 14. And mainly she uses them for communication, not really scrolling. But one of the real the solution is parental education. Like, parents need to know what these platforms are, how to manage them, whether to just not let their kids use them, use parental controls. When my kids first started using a couple of these platforms, there were very poor parental controls. They've got a lot better just in the last 12 months. Most platforms now offer, features like my account is linked to my daughter's TikTok account. So I can put a hard limit on how much time she uses it. I can reset her algorithm. I can do all sorts of things,
nice.
Which, we didn't used to be able to do. So those types of features, this is it's a societal issue, and parents need to help their children navigate society. So parents need to be in charge of this type of thing. It's not really something for the government to mandate. I think it's difficult to compare this to smoking or drinking, which, does obviously has a very directly relatable physical harm.
Yes.
Social media,
years of research, right?
Years and years of research, yes, and lots of proof. And I know there is research that has been done into the damaging effects of the images and influence of social media. So I'm not saying that that's not a real thing. I think it is, but there are also parts of it that are good and beneficial. So if it's managed well, there's no part of smoking that's good or beneficial.
Right.
But social media definitely. My kids use it in their school, like their classes would. My daughter's in a fashion class, so they would create sort of Instagram images and reels for their fashion class. There
because
are
you
different
would be doing
elements.
that, in your job, because it's
Right.
part of our culture at this point, and therefore it's part of most jobs that you're going to do in some way.
Yeah,
so you do need that literacy.
You do. It's a thorny issue. I don't think this is a bad thing that California's doing, but I'm not sure it's really the solution. And I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, you already mentioned lawsuits. I think that's going to come up pretty fast. But ultimately it really is down to parents. And that's, but parental education is more important, I think, at this stage than
I agree.
The kids.
100% I agree with that aspect of this, that they are the people who need to be taught what's going on, how it's going on, and what can be done. It's an interesting thing where I think one might typically, because of the way that we're taught, one might typically think of the legal system being federal first, and then individual state, and then of course like county and city and down on from there. But there's also kind of another aspect of the executive ideal, which is parents. They are the thing that comes after whatever's smaller than city. I feel like city's probably the smallest.
Village?
In the sense, village is smaller than village. It takes a village. And that is the next kind of step that needs to be part of that process, because then the children will grow up and become a part of the village, that becomes a part of the city, that becomes a part of the state, that becomes up and up and up from there. So I think that is sometimes an aspect that is missed, because is there not a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of cynicism that is involved with the government issuing these regulations, because it puts forth this idea that parents aren't going to do this to protect their kids. And you know what I mean? And that's, I feel that is cynical. I understand at the same time, because we're looking at big tech and we're saying they've got so much control, they have so much power, and parents just might not see it and they might miss it. But yes, I agree with the education aspect of it.
And I think that's true. I mean, as someone whose children have grown up as social media has grown up, as I said, it's been really difficult to manage over the last few years. It's gotten easier, but because there's been pressure on these platforms to do more to help manage it. So, this feels like maybe like a last step safety measure. Like if nothing has helped the kid up to this point, at least make it clear that there are some dangers here and be aware. But, you can't, but telling children about danger doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to do something. In fact, most kids enjoy doing things that they're told not to do.
Yeah, don't stick a fork in a in a plug.
Don't put a metal plate in the microwave.
Yeah. But what if I do? What if I do and see what happens? And I did. Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It is always a pleasure to get to talk to you. Of course, folks can head over to The Verge to check out your work. But if they want to follow along with you, where should they go to do so?
Yep. TheVerge.com. We have follow me pages now, so you can just click and get just see all my articles. You can also sign up to get an email of daily digest of everything that I've written, and then I'm on the threads at Smart Home Mama, and also on X at JP2E and Blue Sky. So find me online. I've had some lovely emails from a lot of TWiT listeners recently, so keep those coming as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. If you ever get any non-lovely ones, send them my way, because I'll cast a spell on them. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let us take a quick break before we come back with our interview, looking at, as I promised, the announcements that Apple made this week. But first, let me tell you about Veeam bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. When your data goes dark, well, Veeam is there to turn the lights back on. Veeam keeps enterprise businesses running when digital disruptions like ransomware strike. How? Well, by giving businesses powerful data recovery options that ensure you have the right tool for any scenario, broad, flexible workload coverage from clouds to containers and everything in between, full visibility into the security readiness of every part of your data ecosystem, and tested, documented, and provable recovery plans that can be deployed with a click of a button. That is why Veeam is the #1 global market leader in data resilience. You just call them the global leader in helping you stay calm under pressure. With Veeam, it's all good. Keep your business running at Veeam.com. That's VEEAM.com. And we thank Veeam for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break, and we are joined this week by Six Colors East Coast Bureau Chief, Dan Moren. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
It's good to be here, Mikah. That's me.
That is you. Yes. Dear listeners, if you are listening to this week's episode, I do encourage you to find the video version of the show, if just for this section, because we do have Dan Moren here joining us as your digital persona, which I have to say, I have seen you multiple times in person, and you do look like you. Which is great.
Very reassuring. If I looked like someone else, this would be a whole different problem.
So let's go ahead and get into things, because Apple did make some announcements this week. How was the in-person press event?
Well, it was so spooky. Everyone would go around with their little bags and collect candy from all the various Apple. No, there was no in-person press event this week, because the stuff that Apple announced was rather modest as far as updates go. And I can say this because I have all three of them here in front of me, but only as augmented reality objects in the virtual space. So, all the things that we saw this week from Apple, most of them revolve around this M5 processor. So this is the latest generation of their Apple Silicon chips, and they've embedded this in various devices, including the MacBook Pro, which got a new version of the iPad Pro, and an updated version of the Apple Vision Pro. Not what I'm using. I'm still on the original M2 powered version. So all of those things got the latest generation of Apple Silicon, which, you know, it's Apple Silicon. We kind of know what the progression is at this point, with every successive generation getting a little bit better. Depends on what Apple focuses in on any given year, whether it's CPU or GPU or what have you.
Now, when it comes to these announcements, as you said, sort of modest in the grand scheme of things, what is the draw, right, for these new iterations on the devices, and kind of how much of a difference are we looking at for these? Is it just a matter of kind of, okay, well, we've got the latest tech, so we just need to pop it into what we've got here, as opposed to, with the iPhone event and announcement and launch, seeing quite a change in the design and the feature set, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I mean, these are all incremental updates. And so if you're coming from a recent generation like the M4, the until now current generation, or even the M3, I don't think these are things that you're going to see a big improvement in, maybe not even from an M2 generation one. And you'll notice that if you go and look at Apple's press releases about this, a lot of times what they're highlighting is the difference from the M1 generation. So we're finally getting to the point where that first year's worth of Apple Silicon is kind of become the benchmark, and saying, well, this might be a good time to upgrade if you're somebody who's using one of those original Apple Silicon chips from back in 2020. They've gotten pretty substantial gains from them, because we're talking 4 additional chip generations. But as far as the progress from last year's models go, it's not really very big. I mean, you can even look at these devices and they are virtually indistinguishable. You put one of these M5 MacBook Pros next to an M4 MacBook Pro, I do not think it will be a
Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, exactly. They're both pointing at each other. Yeah. So not a major upgrade year over year, but a cumulative update over all of the years that Apple has been producing these things. And it should be noted as well, in particular with the MacBook Pro, this is only the base model of the Mac Pro, which is to say the one that's just got that vanilla M5 processor in it. The higher level chips, like we have not yet seen the M5 Pro or M5 Max chips. Those are expected to come sometime early next year. And those are the things that really distinguish the MacBook Pro line. I mean, other than, that processor-wise, this would be equivalent to whatever would be an M5 MacBook Air, for example. It's pretty much just a base step up, not really the high horsepower machines that you expect from a MacBook Pro.
Now, is that typical for this version to come out now, and then the other versions to come out later, in the coming year?
I think the way I've summed this up is to say there is no normal. I mean, even though Apple's been doing this for 5 years, every year's had a slightly different release schedule. It's not unheard of for them to release the high-level chips at a different time from the base-level chips. In past, some of the high-level chips had even come much earlier in some of those. We've seen those MacBook Pros come in the fall, and then a base model chip coming later the following spring. So it's kind of been all over the place. I'm not shocked by this. I think the answer is just that this base level M5 chip was ready to go now, and these are the products that were ready for updates, whereas those Pro and Max chips might take a little longer to cook.
Now, of course, the big thing here, AI/IO, is that we're looking at. What do you feel like Apple is setting things up for anything groundbreaking in the AI landscape? Or is this just a matter of saying, don't you worry, these very performant chips are going to be able to, do what you need them to do with the AI stuff you're doing, as opposed to the AI stuff we're doing?
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of this is marketing, and let's call it AI signaling, which is it's a way of telling Wall Street and investors and the financial markets, no, don't worry. Our stuff does AI too. We're on top of it. We may not be NVIDIA making the chips that everybody wants, but we're still making stuff that's really performative for AI. And so I think, they're kind of speaking the language, the buzzwords of what the current environment is all about, and that is about AI. And so there is some, if you want to ask whether or not there's sort of like something to back this up, something concrete, they have made a change in this generation of chips, and they talked about this a little bit with the iPhones earlier this fall as well, which is they've added these neural accelerators on the GPU cores, which are designed to specifically enhance and target the kind of operations you're doing to do AI. That said, I don't really know. We haven't seen a lot of the software implication of this. I don't know how many people are running complicated AI heavy lifting programs on their iPhones or even on their iPads, perhaps more on the MacBook Pros. I think Apple would like to see more development from its third-party partners in terms of using some of the Apple's own foundation models, which is something they've unlocked in the latest version of their platforms. And that's something that certainly seems like it could benefit. I mean, anecdotally, like I've been using my iPhone 17 Pro, which has the same chip architecture, and it seems like, hey, if you want to make a Genmoji or use image playgrounds, it's a bit zippier than it used to be. So that says something, but maybe not a whole lot for the average AI user.
Now, on the iPad side of things, this latest iPad Pro is here, and in scrolling through Apple's press release, I have to tell you, I don't know who this man is. I've never seen this man. He could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know who he was. But this is definitely giving like putting forth this idea that we've got an aspirational bit of iPad.
I like this
glory
guy
here.
Yeah,
I don't know who he is, but he seems pretty cool.
Sitting in his fancy car. He's got his trench coat. This is like the equivalent of all those 1980s and 1990s ads about jet-setting businessmen, I think. It's got serious vibes of that. I don't know anybody who does that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who use their iPad.
Yeah. But not quite that way. When it comes to the latest iPad, is it fair to say it's sort of like having that MacBook power, but in iPad form factor, given that the chip is the same in both?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, with the addition of Apple's peripherals lines, right, its Magic Keyboard and stuff like that, and then certainly with the addition of the iPad OS 26 windowing improvements that add more multitasking that's very Mac-like, I think it's become a matter of preference now in terms of what you want to use, the way you want to use your devices. I think you can do most of the stuff, if not everything, on an iPad that you would probably do on a Mac, at least for the average user. The Pro version, I think, the Pro version, the sort of running story has always been the hardware outstrips the software. I think this year it seems like the software has finally started to catch up. So maybe we'll see this Pro doing better for Apple because of iPad OS 26. But, again, year over year versus the M4 iPad Pro, which is a bit more of a substantial redesign, it doesn't seem like this is necessarily pushing the needle a lot.
Then lastly, the Apple Vision Pro.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. The means through which you are talking to us now. Update there. This is I guess I did not expect to see incremental changes to this device. So it kind of caught me off guard in that way, given, the cost and the development work that's gone into it. I always foresaw it as being this thing that later on down the line you would get the next version that has all these. So tell us a little bit about what you know about this new Apple Vision Pro and kind of your take on this upgrade, sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, along with the iPad Pro and the MacBook Pro, the overriding refrain of this set of releases is kind of, second verse, same as the first. Like, none of them changed substantially, and that includes the Vision Pro. Like the MacBook Pro and the iPad Pro, it now has the M5 processor. And I'll note that's a pretty big jump. I mean, the original the Vision Pro debuted with an M2 processor. So we're talking 3 additional processor generations. And you have to remember, when it comes to Apple, a lot of this stuff is done years in advance. The roadmap is so far planned out that even as they were working on that initial version that launched, the chances were this version was already in development and they were sort of speccing out, hey, down the road, we're going to swap a better chip into this. Now, in terms of what that allows for, it's not a lot. I mean, the main things they talk about it can render more pixels, which makes the more detailed visual, like objects and more detailed graphics. And it can you can up the refresh rate to 120 hertz, which should reduce some motion blur. incremental improvements, not things that are going to blow anybody away, not things that people who are like, oh, I wasn't going to buy a Vision Pro, now I'm going to buy it. But it also has the nice addition of there seems to be some power efficiency savings. It seems like you can eke about an extra half an hour out of the same battery that was on the existing version.
Nice.
So that's a nice addition. And then the other big thing that they debuted here was an additional strap. This has been sort of one of the complaints with the Vision Pro from a comfort standpoint is, well, you've got that solo band, which is a really nice 3D knit one, but some people find that doesn't quite provide enough support. They had this dual head strap thing, which is not quite as nice looking. It's all Velcro straps and everything, but it did provide potentially more support. And then there were some third-party options, including from Belkin. So what they've done with this new dual knit band, I'm trying to remember how they call it, is essentially take that 3D printed solo model, but add a second strap that goes over the top of your head, both of which can be adjusted from this same little dial. So it sort of tightens as you go. Whether this will solve problems, I mean, one of the other things they've included in here is the back strap includes weights in it, like little tungsten inserts. And the idea being that it will distribute the weight and provide better balance and provide more of a counterweight to the front, which, as most reviewers have noted, is very heavy. Mm-hmm. That doesn't, of course, reduce the net weight of the thing. It's still heavy, and now it's arguably heavier. But the question is whether that weight is better distributed to make it more comfortable for long periods of time in using it. So I think, people who have an existing Vision Pro can buy that as an add-on, but it comes by default with the new M5 Vision Pro. So Apple seems pretty confident about it.
Anything else from these announcements? And I guess my last question would be, do you expect to see Apple announce anything else for the remainder of the year? Or are we looking at next year for what's left?
There were a couple minor things here and there, some accessory updates. I think the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Air now comes in black. Great. The Vision Pro gets a couple of other promised third-party accessories, including the Logitech sort of digital pencil that they announced, I think, back, I don't remember when that was, maybe back WWDC, which lets you manipulate 3D objects. And then they also gave a date for the, they've talked about integration with PlayStation's VR controllers, and have said that will be coming, they'll be able to buy a bundle of the controllers from the Apple Store in November. So it's a couple minor things. As far as future announcements go, there's a handful of products that it seems like could be coming sooner rather than later, including updates to AirTags, a new Apple TV, possibly a HomePod Mini refresh. Apple, given that they just did a press release for these previous announcements, wouldn't surprise me if they rolled out another set of those next week. I don't expect any further events at this point. I don't think anything they've got left in there is big enough to warrant it, but kind of like we saw with these sort of minor bumps, being able to put out a press release or two or three on a day and say, hey, we've got a handful of new products, especially in the lead up to the holiday season. I wouldn't bet against it at this point.
All right. Well, I guess we will wait and see.
The time-honored words.
Indeed. Dan Moren, thank you so much for being here today. Of course, folks can head to sixcolors.com to check out your work. If they'd like to follow along with what you have and buy your books, where should they go to do so?
You can find everything else that I do and links to all my writing and podcasts, including Clockwise, which I do with Mikah Hero every Wednesday, over at dmoren.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Mikah. Goodbye.
Goodbye, ghostly Dan. Alrighty, folks, we're going to take a quick break before we come back with my story of the week. I want to tell you first about Vention bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Well, we talk a lot about it on the show. You know, AI is everywhere, and when it's used right, it can deliver results. Chances are you're already thinking about how to bring it into your business. So the question is, how to do it without wasting time, without wasting money, without, wasting that momentum that you have. I got to speak to the folks at Vention about the solution that they provide. Here is the answer. Backed by 2 decades of software delivery experience, Vention's AI workshops offer practical, expert-led sessions that give your team the insights and structure they need to make smart decisions. With it, you bring your product vision and current stack, and then Vention brings deep expertise in AI, engineering, and your business domain. Together, you will turn the high-level ideas into a tailored roadmap you can trust. Whether you're a CTO, a tech lead, or product owner, you won't have to spend weeks figuring out tools or architectures or models because Vention helps assess your AI readiness, clarify your goals, and outline the steps to get you there without the headaches, without wondering, well, what's the next step? How am I going to go about achieving this? Is this actually achievable? If you need help on the engineering front, well, their teams are ready to jump in as your development or consulting partner. It's the most reliable step to take after your POC. Let's say you've built a promising prototype on Lovable, for example. It runs well in tests, but what's next? How do you go from that to an actual product? Do you open a dozen AI-specific roles just to keep moving, or do you bring in a partner who has done this across industries? Someone who can expand your idea into a full-scale product without disrupting your systems or slowing your team. That's the big thing, right? There's one instance they talked about where you have an idea and you implement it, and then suddenly it's costing so much money for each individual user who is using this AI system. And you're going, how in the world do I make this more cost effective? Well, Vention came in and made it more cost effective, figured out how to save money while continuing to do create the AI product that they were looking for. Even with modern platforms, prototyping can be draining. Once you get something working, chances are you'll want to shift gears from problem-solving mode to a bigger picture view. And that's exactly why product leaders turn to Vention. Not just for the AI workshops, but for the peace of mind that comes from knowing you're not building blind. So if you value speed, clarity, and impact, and want to avoid second-guessing your next AI move, well, learn more at ventionteams.com or book your workshop at ventionteams.com/twit. You'll leave with a plan that works, a partner you can count on, and a lot fewer gray hairs. That's ventionteams.com/twit. Thank you, Vention, for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right. Back from the break, and it is time to talk about a new change over on Instagram. Instagram is implementing its most significant teen accounts update yet, automatically applying content restrictions modeled after PG-13 movie ratings to all users under 18. The platform will filter content to match what teenagers would encounter in a PG-13 film, while introducing a new limited content setting for parents seeking even stricter controls. Now, the sweeping change, which begins rolling out in the US, UK, and Australia this week, and Canada also, represents Meta's latest attempt to address parental concerns about age-appropriate content on social media. And we'll talk about an interesting wrinkle involved in this in just a little bit. But I want to start by talking about this. So Instagram was kind of looking at, any company, right, is going to sort of talk to its user base and figure out what's working and what's not. And we were talking earlier to Jennifer Pattison Tuohy of The Verge about her take on how social media companies should or should not be held responsible and where the education needs to take place. And I have to give props to Instagram for actually talking to parents and trying to figure things out from parents, as opposed to just sort of rolling out these controls and seeing if it works, but saying, here are our current controls, because Instagram teen accounts have existed for some time. But taking that a step further and saying, okay, we rolled this out, here's what we had, but you say you want more and need more control, and maybe some clarity on what your child is going to see. In fact, Meta told me that nearly all of the accounts that are teen accounts that feature was enabled have remained within these built-in restrictions. So once they're turned on these accounts, it's actually staying, which I think is a testament to the level of filtering and the level of control that's taking place here. Now, with this, the idea is that it's about understanding what your child's experience is going to be. And it's that education that we were talking about earlier, right? So for decades now, we've known what a PG-13 experience is going to be. And that means that the company took the opportunity to kind of look at the guidelines and then look at the guidelines for PG-13 movies and then update them accordingly. Now, that said, there are some cases where Instagram goes further than you would see in a PG-13 movie. And there are some instances where up to this point, the company did make some changes to bring things more in line. So beyond existing policies that hide sexually suggestive content, graphic images, and adult content like tobacco or alcohol sales, the updated policies also hide posts with strong language. A big one is this next one, certain risky stunts and content showing specifically cannabis paraphernalia. The platform reports, again, 95% of U.S. parents surveyed think these updated settings will be helpful, and 90% saying they'll make it easier to understand the kind of content their teen is likely to see. So it's all about that aspect of it, right? Kind of, what does this mean? Well, I can look to a PG-13 film and a specific title and go, okay, it's like that. So how is the company going about making this change? Well, they extend across multiple Instagram features. So there's account restrictions. Teens can no longer follow accounts that regularly share age-inappropriate content or whose names or bios would suggest inappropriate material. So Instagram is looking at those places and saying, here's where we're going to cut back on what's there. Existing follows to such accounts will have their content hidden. These accounts cannot follow teens, send DMs, or comment on teens' posts. I was concerned that this would mean creators might not realize that their accounts are not following these guidelines, right? That it would mean that creators would look and say, wow, suddenly my views have dropped, my interactions have dropped. Meta says that it will be very clear for a creator to go into their account and look and find out, oh, yes, indeed, I am able to see why my account has been, is not suitable for teens and specifically what it is. So, for example, an OnlyFans link in your URL would be one example of how that could be impacted. There are also limitations to search. So the platforms will block teens' ability to see content results for mature search terms like alcohol or gore, so that those terms will remain blocked even when they're misspelled. So different versions of that to try and hide it. Because remember that right now, there are a lot of different ways that creators will hide what they are showing to people. For example, I've seen a lot of times when they're talking about THC or cannabis, they'll block out a few letters, or they will like bleep out the actual be like TH bleep, so that the algorithm doesn't automatically pick up on this. Instagram is working to be better about limiting these terms. And then also, teens aren't going to see guideline violating content and recommendations in the feed or in stories, even from accounts they follow. So that's a big thing that's changed as well. It means, I was kind of curious about this too, what's this going to look like for a teen who logs into the account after this has been rolled out? It means that if you are currently following an account that does not fit within these guidelines, if it's a guideline violating account, that teen will no longer be able to visit that account page, will no longer be able to DM that person, but also the DMs that they see will stop at the current message and no more conversation can take place until that becomes a guideline following account again. And if it doesn't, then that's okay too. But it just means that the teen's not able to do that. And a sort of, not a placeholder, but a replacement. It sort of reminds me of when your web policy blocks certain sites. You go to that site and then a little page pops up and says, sorry, you can't visit this site. The same thing kind of here, where it will show something in place of that account and you'll see that instead. There are some even stricter controls that parents will be able to use. And I will talk about those in a moment after we take a quick break. To tell you about OutSystems, bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Our friends at OutSystems, the leading AI-powered application and agent development platform. For more than 20 years, the mission of OutSystems is to give every company the power to innovate through software. IT teams typically have two choices. You can buy off-the-shelf SaaS products for speed, but lose flexibility and differentiation, or you can build custom software, but in doing so, lose time and resources. AI forges the way for another path. The fusion of AI, low-code, and DevSecOps automation onto one development platform. Your teams will build custom applications with AI agents as easily as buying generic off-the-shelf sameware, and flexibility, security, and scalability that will come standard. With AI-powered low-code, teams can build custom future-proof applications at the speed of buying with fully automated architecture, security, integrations, data flows, and permissions. OutSystems is the last platform you need to buy because you can use it to build anything and customize and extend your core systems. So build your future with OutSystems. Visit outsystems.com/twit to learn more. That's outsystems.com/twit. And of course, we thank OutSystems for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. We're talking about Meta over on Instagram rolling out some new controls for teen accounts on the platform. We talked a little bit about the PG-13 movie ratings being used as a kind of template for what an experience will be like for teens, giving parents a better understanding of what that is. But there's also a new option that is called limited content. This is even stricter and will filter even more content. It means that along with kind of, as I mentioned, more content filtering across the service, you also will have a restriction in the ability to see, leave, or receive comments. This is going to come out next year. Or rather, there'll be another part that comes out next year. But essentially what this does is it says you aren't able to read comments, you're not able to comment on another post, and people are not able to comment on your posts. Now, the part that's coming next year is that it's also going to restrict AI conversations. Now, to be clear, it's not completely restricting those conversations as if the AI conversations can't take place, but instead is limiting those conversations to a sort of specific version of the AI. So you're not having kind of personal conversations, but instead can use it for things like school, work, or what have you, Meta AI, whatever you might be using that for. Now, Meta's research says 96% of US parents appreciated having this option available, regardless of whether they choose to activate it. Just in case, you need to switch to that limited content for a period of time, you see that your child is receiving, abusive comments or something like that are slipping past any filters or protections. This can come through and be helpful there, or, in any case where limiting the child's ability to comment or receive comments is great. Now, I was curious about the parent aspect of this, how what is defined as a parent in the case of these new guidelines, and how someone is able to kind of give feedback. And according to Meta, it is there are multiple ways that they are communicating with parents and receiving feedback. But one of those ways is occasionally scrolling through your Instagram feed and seeing a poll pop up, and being able to answer there in the poll. So that's kind of where those percentages come into play. One thing that I did want to mention, and thank you, John Ashley, for pointing this out. The Motion Picture Association of America, actually, it's just the MPA, not just, it's not the MPAA, but the MPA, had this to say about this new change. Basically, the chairman, Charles Rivkin, said that the organization was not contacted beforehand, and of course, welcomes efforts to protect children, but basically said, look, there's no connection between our rating system and Instagram's rating system, meaning that it's not as if the MPA has blessed these ratings. And I think this requires a little bit of context that I always love to talk about, which is something very fascinating about the state of media and how it was built over time. When the moving pictures came along, when the movies came along, the talkies and the movies, at the time, there was no regulation on this content. But we being the people making movies, saw the way that the government came in and regulated utilities and radio, and the people at the time said, we do not want the government to regulate what we do. And how can we keep the government from regulating what we do? Well, we regulate ourselves. So the MPA, well, in this case, it was the MPAA, came forth and said, we are implementing a rating system, and we are making sure that every single movie follows this rating system, and that it is, a hard line, fast rule. So much so that in some cases they were even stronger in the regulatory blowback or regulatory response than you would have seen from the government, because the idea is, look, we're taking care of ourselves. We don't need your help. And that has remained to this day. That's why the rating system is so strong. That's why, Meta is able to point at it as a means, because so many of us are familiar with how that rating system works. It is a strong and steadfast set of guidelines that have changed very little over time and are, sort of a touchstone. So the MPA says, great, you're protecting kids, but we didn't know that you were planning on comparing your stuff to our rating system, and we just need to make that clear to everybody. In any case, the updated content settings are rolling out again in the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada. The full implementation will be by the year's end, and will also go to protect in other places as well, global expansion. Lastly, Instagram is using age prediction technology to place teens into these content protections, even if they claim to be adults. So even if the account is not automatic or is not turned to a teen account or created as a teen account with the parents' involvement, Instagram is attempting to look at how over time, if this is indeed a teen, in which case implementing this teen filtering. So that is something that we will continue to watch and make sure that they are protected under these changes. So that's kind of a look at where Instagram stands with the teen accounts and its latest changes to this new filter and, set of guidelines. Folks, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Always appreciate you joining us here. If you head to twit.tv/TNW, that's where you can go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. Publish the show every Thursday. If you'd like to get ad-free episodes of all of our shows, can I invite you to join our club? Twit.tv/club. Twit is where you go to sign up. When you join the club, as I mentioned, you'll get ad-free versions of all of our shows. You'll also gain access to our special feeds. These include our coverage and commentary of different tech events that take place, news events, as well as access to our bits and clips, that kind of behind the scenes, before the show, after the show stuff, and access to our special club shows like Mikah's Crafting Corner, Stacy's Book Club. We've got camera time. We've got occasionally coffee time, the AI user group, so much great stuff there as well. And when you join the club, you're going to get access to that huge back catalog of stuff you can tune into and check out. So that's one reason to do so. Lastly, you'll get to join the disc. Oh, yes. And also coming up next Friday, if you can believe it, Friday the 24th, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific, I will be running a D&D adventure with a cast of characters, TWiT hosts and contributors who will be joining us then. So if that sounds good to you, the only way you're going to get to see that is if you join the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. Would love to have you there. You'll gain access to the Discord server where you can also chat with us and your fellow Club Twit members. Twit.tv/clubtwit. I know I've said it 100 times, but there it is again. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent on pretty much every social media network. You can also head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Goodbye until next time. And have a happy spooky week.